Greetings, Bainbridge folks, for Physics 1112 lab. This is your second online lab, and it is Ohm's Law. And what you're looking at now is, I've got this Excel template, similar to Lab 1. As you're doing the online lab, you fill out the Excel template, and it's an Ohm's Law lab. And notice here I have, I'll explain these first two columns in a minute, but so you're going to run the simulation, and you're going to set your resistance in the simulation for sheet 1, set it around 857 ohms. If it's not 857 exactly, I don't care. But you want it to be in that range, 850, anywhere between 850 and 860. Then on sheet 2, you're going to use a resistance, a simulation resistance of about half that, so around 415. And you'll see why. I don't care if it's exact, but anywhere from like 410 to 420, and then sheet 1 anywhere from like 850 to 860. Well, so what do? Well, here's the link to the simulation right here. So you click on the link, and see here's the simulation, and it's Ohm's law. And so you'll want to set your resistance to, in sheet 1 around 857, and in sheet 2 around 415. And you'll see why I say it doesn't have to be exact. Let me go back to the simulation. Here's where you drag, and as you got that noise, can be a little bit annoying. But so anywhere from 840 to, or 850 to 860, anywhere in that range, so there's 850. And then for the other sheet, around about half as much, so around 415, 430. Oh, 419 would work. Okay, now I'm gonna run you through the template. I'm gonna use different values than what you have. So let me go ahead and bring up my spreadsheet. And I'm going to, in sheet 1, I'm going to set my simulation resistance right here. I'm going to set it equal to around 250. It's a little bit tedious, but it is what it is. I'm going to go ahead and here set my 256 will work. And then notice in the template, we want to set the voltage. We want to set the voltage 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in increments of 1 up to 9 volts. That's already entered in the template. And what you're going to do is, as you set those voltages, you're going to enter the current values in the current column. So, go to the simulation. And again, it's a little bit tedious. But here, set 1 volt. 1 volt. And notice it says here, the current is 39. And notice it's in milliamps. So when I enter this into Excel, I want to enter for 1 volt, I want to enter 3.9 milliamps. So I'm going to go ahead and right here, 3.9. And remember, in Excel language, milli is 10 to the minus 3. So I just type in the letter E, then minus 3. And scroll down. Now I'm going to, then let me go to 2 volts, and then I'll pause the video while I fill the rest of the column. Now let me go to 2 volts. And it's a little bit tedious, but it's not very complicated. Okay, 2 volts, and my current is now 7.8 milliamps. I'll go back to mine right here. 7.8 E minus 3. Now I'm going to pause the video. I'm going to set my voltage to 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and enter the cards. And I'll just pause the video while I'll do that. I mean, it's not complicated. You all get the idea. I'm going to go up to 3 volts. Right there at 11.7. I'm going to pause the video and enter the remaining current values. Okay, so I'm now here at my 9 volts. I've entered all my current values. Now notice my simulation resistance. I wanted something around 250. You're going to use the values that I told you to use in your template. Obviously, I want you to use different values than I did. So my simulation resistance is 256 ohms. I'm going to go ahead and enter that in my spreadsheet. Right here, RSIM 256. And now we're going to get that we need this experimental resistance, this cell here E5 where it says R experimental. Well, how do we get that? Well, if we know that if Ohm's law, V equals IR, or V equals R times I, that's linear. And so if you graph V on the y-axis and I on the x-axis, and you take your slope is going to give you what we call the experimental resistance. Now, I think in the first lab, I think I had the template set up where it created the graph automatically. We're doing this. We're doing the same thing twice, and the idea is, one, it illustrates Ohm's law, but two, to give you practice as to how to create these Excel graphs on your own. So let me go ahead. So again, you populate the current column, and notice, remember, all the currents were in milliamps. If you go back to the simulation, when you enter, E minus 3, Excel's going to change it. Don't worry about that. Excel knows what it's doing. So now we need to create the V versus I graph. And the default in Excel is when you're graphing two columns of data, the default in Excel is that the first column goes on the x-axis and the second column goes on the y-axis. So I'm going to go ahead, and what you do is you click here, you highlight both columns and the headers, the I and the voltage. So I'm just going to hold the left mouse button down, and like that, okay. Then you go to insert, and right here chart, and the third one over. And notice Excel's giving me, I know my data's good, Excel's giving me this linear graph. And you want to size it a little bit, so when I grade your Excel file, it's easy to see. Now we need to format it correctly, and I'm very particular about the formatting. I've submitted a couple of papers using graphs I created in Excel, and the scientific graphs, they need to be formatted a specific way. The idea is, if for some reason you're ever submitting a paper that has a graph in it, and you created that graph in Excel, well, they don't really care how you got the graph, but graphs have to be formatted in a specific way. And this is to give you practice in how to do it. So what I did is I highlighted, grabbed the first two columns, did insert, chart, and the third one over. Then you go up to here, because see the graph is selected, go up to quick layout and choose the very first one right there. And it's a little bit tedious, but it's something that you have to know how to do. So I'm going to hover the mouse over these horizontal lines, and I'm going to left click. And I don't want them. Hit just to delete. They're gone. Okay. Then this thing, voltage there, that box, delete. We don't need that. Okay. Notice the graph is changing. Now I need to format the axes correctly. And remember, the current is on the x-axis and the voltage is on the y-axis. It doesn't matter which one you do first. I'm going to format the x-axis. I'm going to hold the mouse over, and when I see the arrow, I left click. Oh, I'm sorry. And then now I've got left click. Then you see the horizontal box. Now right click and do format axis. So again, to go over what I did, I hold the mouse over the axis I want to format. When I have the arrow, left click, see the horizontal box, and then right click when you see the arrow. And right click, format axis. Okay. Now it looks like the bounds look good. We can check that in a minute. Let's go ahead and do tick marks. And we want major and minor, and we want them both inside. So inside and inside. Okay. Then you see the tick marks show up. Now, notice the major unit is 0.005 and the minor unit is 0.001. Typically, I like the minor unit to be half of the major. So instead of 001, I'm going to do 0025. And click outside, and you'll see that the ticks will change. See that? You don't want too many tick marks. Now I'm going to go back. I have to finish formatting. When I see the arrow, I left click. When I have that horizontal box, I'll see the arrow, right click, format axis. Okay, so I did the tick marks. Everything's good. Now, over here in the shade, notice for the line, notice Excel, the default color is this light gray. Well, we don't want that. We want black. There, see that? Okay. Text options, no. We'll go axis options back here. Now I'm going to go back to the graph. I hover the mouse over that box. I'm going to right click and I want to do font. And I want the font color to be black. And I want the text, the standard scientific font is Times New Roman. It's reacting a little bit slow. Right here. So if you type in TIM in that box, see Times New Roman, you'll go down, click it. And we probably want the size to be either 10 or 11. Probably 10. Times New Roman. Okay, then click OK. And notice that notice the numbers on the x-axis. They look like they're a little bit too close together. Let me pause it. I think there might be a way to change that. Let me pause this for a second. Okay, so right here, again, I'm going to hover over the axis, click left, then right. Format axis. Now, notice, see the numbers here, they look like they're a little bit too close together. See, so I'm going to go over here to number, and scientific's okay, but I'm just going to use one decimal place. But see, they're all, if you look at the x-axis, they're all zeros. 3.00, 3.504. So I think probably one decimal place will suffice. And click outside. Yeah, now notice that that's much easier to read. Okay. Now we need to go back and let's do oops, I didn't want to do that. Okay, now I want to do the axis title. Well, highlight it and you can go up here to the font again, Times New Roman. TIM. I don't know why Excel doesn't bring it up, but there's Times New Roman. We want the color. You can go up to Home. Probably this is a little bit easier. I want the color to be black, and the font size probably for the axis title I want 12. Okay. Now remember, the first column of data, the current in amps, that's on the x-axis. So when that's highlighted, I'm just going to type in capital I, then parentheses, and capital A for amps, I in amps. Click outside. Now the x-axis is formatted correctly. Now let's go ahead and do the same thing for the y-axis. Hover over with the mouse when you see the arrow, left click, then in the horizontal box, or now vertical box, excuse me, when you see the arrow, right click, format axis. And again, tick marks, inside. Now the major unit is min 0 to 10, that's fine. Major unit's 1, I want the minor unit to be 0.5. Click outside, notice much better. Okay, now here. Now let's go to, remember the shade, we don't want the gray, we want black. Okay. Here, I hover over, I've got the arrow, right click font. Again, make sure the color, it's a little bit tedious, but it is what it is. Again here, type in TIM and Times New Roman. Let's go back in, font, 10. It's Times New Roman, it's black. That looks good. Then we'll put in the title. That's okay. Yep, look at that. Now here, click on the axis title. Now I'm going to go here, format axis title. I want to go over here first. And text direction, I want it to be horizontal. Okay. I want, I'm going to click in here, highlight it. I want the font to be, what did we say, 12 or 11, I think we said, 11. Oops, I think I accidentally hit 14. My right hand is a little bit a mind of its own. Yeah, I'll do 11. And then Times New Roman. There, now it's there. Times New Roman, make sure the color is black. Yeah. And now for the y-axis, it's just the voltage. It's voltage in volts. And let me just double check. That font is 11 down here in the x-axis. Oh, font 12. What was this font? 10. I'll make this one, I guess, 11. 12's maybe a little bit big. I mean, I don't really care if you use 11 or 12. And then I think I want a space. There we go. Okay, so now I've got my axes formatted. It looks pretty good. Now, just going to make that graph a little bit bigger. Okay, click outside. I'm done with this. Now, I need to get what's called the experimental resistance, i.e. the slope of this line. Oh, wait a minute. Let me go ahead and format the title first. I'm sorry about that. We'll hold off on the slope for a minute. Now let me go ahead and format the title. And for again, the font is Times New Roman. We want the color to be black. And now the title is, the lab is Ohm's Law. And then the graph is, little spaces, V versus I. And typically we want the variables, the V and the I, in italics. Oops, italics, italics. And then I want the title to be bold and font 14. That looks good. So everything, titles, everything looks good. Now let me go ahead and I need to get the slope. Well, I've got this straight line, and it's blue. If you want to make it black, that's fine. I don't think that's. I think if this were being submitted with a paper, we'd want that line to be black. So let me go ahead and fill and black. The thickness is good. Maybe take it down. It looks a little bit thick. Let me do play around. Let's take it 1. Yeah, that looks good. So now I need to get the slope. So I'm going to go over the lab. I'm going to right click when I see the arrow, add trend line. The add trend line feature in Excel means, hey, do a fit? Is it linear? Is it quadratic? Is it whatever? So add trend line, and obviously that's a straight line. So linear fit is, Excel's smart in some ways. Linear fit is selected. That's good. Now these equations here, in this case, we want to set the intercept to 0. Because if you have 0 volts, you're going to have 0 current. Then I want to display equation and display R squared. And now notice this equation box popped up. Now I'm going to take that equation box and I'm going to move it away from the line a little bit so I can read it. Now within the equation box, you want to highlight the text and you want to set the font size to 12. Oh, yeah, it's a little bit tricky. Try this again. I'm going to go up here. I'm going to make it red, and I want the size to be 12. And remember, Times New Roman. Anytime scientific, there. Now I'm going to put a space before and after the equal sign, just to make it easier to read. I want the Y to be in italics. Typically your variables like that, you want them to be in italics. Likewise with the X, just the X, not the number, italics. And the R, italics. Nice. Now notice this is Y equals MX plus B, but we set the intercept equal to 0. So our slope is the 256.02. That is the experimental resistance. So I don't round. I'm going to take right there our experiment. I'm going to type in 256.02. And now the percent error, that's a trivial calculation. It should update itself when I click outside. And then a percent error of 0.008%. Let me pause this for a second. I just want to change the formatting a little bit on the experimental resistance cell. What I'm doing is I want, because the slope was 256.02, so I want to set the number of decimals in this one. I want the decimals to be 2. There we go. Okay, there we go. Now the exact value shows up. All right, now we're almost done. Now the last thing we need to do is Excel did this linear fit. It did that trend line. Well, I don't see the trend line, so I'm going to go hover over the graph, right click when you see the arrow, format trend line. And over here to the fill, I want the color to be red to match up with our equation box. The thickness, maybe 1.25, maybe 1.5, it doesn't matter. But I want the dash type to be this one right there. And maybe I'll make it a little bit thicker. And see now, then click outside. Now I can clearly see the trend line. And so you're done. Then with sheet 2, I would do a resistance of about twice. I would do, for my values, I would do a resistance of around 500 ohms. So I would go back to the simulation. I would go back to the simulation. And I want, essentially I want about twice of what I use. So around 500, 514 is good enough. Then start that with a voltage of 1 volt. My current's 1.9 milliamps. So you're doing the same thing twice. And the idea is you want to have that practice of creating your Excel graph. And remember, you want it formatted, and I think everything here is good. Obviously, put your name, and then you'll have sheet 2. So I'm going to close out, and now here's the template. And notice sheet 1. I want you to use a resistance of around 850 ohms, and I think when I did I couldn't, I was hit 857. That's fine. Anywhere between around 850 to 860 for this one, and for sheet 2, probably here do about a fourth, do something around anywhere around 220. I tell you, anywhere from from 210 to 220, 210 to 230, somewhere in that range. And I think you're good to go. I'm going to save this video, and I'll get it posted along with the template. Alrighty.